this is exactly why I feel it is so necessary to undertake the inward-facing path, and not to bypass the inward-facing path and go straight to everything is one. You know, fishes feel that everything is one. Fishes have no sense of, I am a fish swimming in the water, and there is a world out there. Infants feel one with their surroundings. They cannot separate themselves from their mother to begin with. And what we are not speaking of here is a kind of pre-verbal oneness that infants and animals experience. And this pre-verbal oneness is often mistaken on the contemporary non-dual scene with the oneness of non-duality. So it is for this reason that in most cases I feel that it is important to take this inward-facing path, to recognize not just that I am awareness, but to recognize the infinite nature, the infinite, unlocated, impersonal nature of awareness, and then to discover everything is that. And these two stages, you find them in all the traditions. In the Zen tradition, when they say, first the rivers are rivers and the mountains are mountains, then the rivers are no longer rivers and the mountains are no longer mountains, and then in the third stage the rivers are rivers again and the mountains are mountains again. So the first stage and the last stage, they appear to be the same. To begin with, the rivers are rivers. That's how the fish and the infant experiences. In the last stage, the rivers are rivers again. But in the first stage, consciousness is merged with experience. In the last stage, experience is merged in consciousness. So although everything appears in the same way, its reality is felt and understood to be infinite consciousness. So the first discovery, the first stage, is to discover the infinite nature of awareness, and then to discover that everything is that.
I understand that. I mean, it's just the rub is in the localization. I have no other words to explain it. Just
okay.
I understand this awareness, yes, but the.
So tell us now about whatever it is that is aware of your experience.
Yeah, I'm just awareness. Just
okay. We call it awareness. What else can you tell us about it from your experience?
Looking, noticing, openness.
It's open. Yes. It's experiencing or knowing or yes.
Yeah.
What else?
It's available, and it's wide in a way.
It's wide open, yes, yeah. Yes. What else?
It's here. It's unmistakable. It's undeniable.
It's present. It's undeniable. Yeah. Keep going.
Well, also love comes up immediately. It just feels like love. Also, it feels like love in the sense of that there's nothing distinguishable. That there's no objects. There's just. Yeah.
So if I were to ask you, can you find the edge of awareness?
I always have a problem with that.
Well, go okay, there now. Yes. Look at the experience of being aware. Yeah. Because I don't want to have a philosophical discussion with you about this. And I know you don't want to either. So in order to discover, does awareness have an edge? How are we going to discover that? Are we going to ask thought what it thinks about awareness? No, we all know what thought thinks about awareness. We think awareness shares the limits of the body. But who is the one that knows the experience of being aware? Who is having that experience?
Yeah, I awareness.
I awareness. It is awareness that is aware that there is awareness. Awareness, it's not the body that knows that there is awareness. It is awareness that is aware. Therefore, awareness is the only one that can tell us anything about itself. It is the only one that knows itself.
Yep.
Now, you awareness, ask yourself, what is my experience of myself? And more specifically, do I find any limits in myself? Now, in order to answer that question, you awareness have to look at yourself. You have to be aware of the experience of being aware. Now, go there. Do you find any limits to the experience of being aware?
I find nothing there. I mean, nothing distinguishable.
Well, you say you find nothing there. It's true, you find nothing there in the sense of you find no thing there. But if I were to ask you the question, are you aware? What would you say?
Yes.
Yeah, that comes from a positive experience. When I asked you, are you aware? You didn't say, I don't know. You said yes. And that yes comes from an unmistakable experience, albeit a non-objective one. So you're right, it is nothing, if by nothing you mean it is not a thing. But it is not nothing. That there is something which is not a thing, that enables you to say, yes, I am experiencing being aware. It's a unique experience. It's an experience that has no objective qualities to it, and yet it is an undeniable experience. If it wasn't your experience, you would have said no to the question, am I aware? Or, I don't know. But you said emphatically yes. On account of what experience did you say yes to that question?
On account that is all there is here.
Now go there. You've acknowledged that you are experiencing being aware.
Very much so, yeah.
Perfect. Tell us about it. Does it have a limit? Can you find an edge to it?
No, I cannot find any distinguishing features. I
Okay.
cannot find.
So if you can't find any distinguishing features, what validity is there to your belief that it is located? Only something with distinguishing features could be located.
Yeah.
So your belief that it is located is at odds with your experience. Now, which are you going to trust?
I have to admit that that's true.
I mean, is belief or experience the test of reality? It's got to be one of those two.
Experience.
It must be experience. Trust your experience. When we say that consciousness is infinite or unlocated, I am not speaking of an extraordinary experience that a few special people have and that is not available to everybody else. I'm talking about an experience which is equally available to all people. In fact, it's not people that have that experience, it is awareness that has that experience. But as a concession, let's say that it's equally accessible to all people. Ramana Maharshi didn't have privileged access to awareness. He didn't have special knowledge about awareness that you or I don't have, or that are not able to have.
Yeah.
It's just that he was rigorously honest about his experience. The nature of awareness is equally available to all of us. It is equally available to itself. It is always available to itself. It's just that in almost all cases, a network of beliefs and feelings has been thrown over awareness, making awareness look as if it was temporary and finite, making awareness look as if it shares the qualities, the limitations and the destiny of the body. But if we are clear, if we refer only to the experience of being aware, and we try to find the experience of being aware, we can't find it as an object in time and space, just like the screen never appears as an object in the movie. The movie is a coloring of the screen, but the screen never appears in the time and space that exists for one of the characters in the movie.
I guess that whole limitation thing is, unlimited thing is that I was trying to find the unlimitedness in the space, in the objects.
Yes, but you're like a character in the movie traveling the world in search of the screen. The screen will never show up in your world. When I say in your world in this context, I mean the world of the finite mind, that is, the world that seems to exist in time and space. If we look for consciousness in time and space, we're like the character in the movie traveling the world in search of the screen. The screen never shows up in his world. His world is a modulation of the screen for which he is in search.
But awareness doesn't even know that. I mean, you formulate it that way, but in my experience now, this awareness is just empty.
No, awareness knows itself.
But as this experience now, I guess. But as
when I asked you the question, "Are you aware?" you paused and said yes. The reason you said yes was because in between the question and the answer, you were aware of being aware. Yeah. As a result, now, who was the you that was aware of being aware?
Yeah, awareness.
Now, so awareness is aware of being aware.
Yeah.
I can't resist telling the story of the Oxford philosopher. Professor, I'm sorry to those of you who have heard it, but it's so relevant, so bear with me for those of you that have heard it. I'll be brief about it. A year or so ago, Ellen and I were told by a friend that a very famous professor of philosophy at Oxford University, no less, was giving a talk entitled The Nature of Consciousness. So this was just down the road from where we live. We were, of course, very interesting. We went to the talk. I'll just quote one line from his talk. Some philosophers believe that consciousness can be aware of itself. Their ideas should be put in the trash. This is a highly respected professor of philosophy from Oxford University. Worse than ignoring, denying publicly the most obvious, primary, intimate, fundamental nature of all experience. Unbelievable. This is a professor of philosophy. What has he been teaching his students for the last 40 years? If the foundation upon which all his ideas are based is faulty, awareness's primary experience is to know itself. If awareness didn't know itself, none of us would know that we were aware. But the experience of being aware, is it an extraordinary experience, or is it the most obvious experience there is? It's not a mystical experience or a spiritual experience. It's just the most ordinary experience that nearly all people overlook. Why? because of our fascination with the objective content of experience, thoughts, feelings, sensations and perceptions. Because we're so fascinated by the movie, we seem not to see the screen, although all we are seeing is the screen. So in our culture we ignore, most of us, the reality of consciousness, although all that is ever known is consciousness. But so fascinated are we by the objective content of experience that we overlook it. It's very difficult. I've noticed this, that even in people who have been studying and practicing, I don't just mean studying philosophically, but studying and practicing the non-dual teaching for many years, for decades, there is this lingering feeling that the body is aware. That right now, as we sit here, it is I, the body, that is aware. And once we start there, all our subsequent ideas and beliefs will contain this original error within them. It is not the body that is aware. It is awareness that is aware. And awareness is not a property of the body. It is not the body that has consciousness.
Yeah, it's a very deeply ingrained idea.
It's very deeply ingrained, and it survives decades of non-dual practice, meditation and study. It really goes to the heart of the matter, to really understand now that it is awareness that is aware. It's true that awareness must, as it were, collapse into the finite mind in order to view objective experience. I grant that. But the knowing with which the finite mind knows its knowledge and experience is not itself finite.
And that knowing, sorry, I come back to just
No, that's
to make
fine.
sure to remove
Sure.
doubts. That knowing, well, I cannot say that knowing is here. That's the first error. I point to the body and I say the knowing is here.
You're right, knowing is here. By here we mean the place at which experience takes place. Yes? Now have you noticed that wherever you are, it's here? Yeah? So here is not one particular point in space. What is meant by here? Here is the place at which experience takes place. What is that place?
Well, that is the only place there is. That's awareness, or
It's
the heart
awareness.
of all things.
Yes.
Or
So here is not a place in space. Here is the dimensionless here of consciousness. And just like here is not a place in space, so now is not a moment in time. Have you noticed that it's always now?
the mind just cannot conceive of
No,
that,
you,
that dimensionless.
we cannot think of something with no dimensions. In other words, we cannot think of consciousness. That is why in the traditions we speak of the space-like presence of consciousness. In other words, we add a space-like quality to consciousness, and then immediately we can think of it. We say consciousness is a vast knowing space in which experience takes place. Well, consciousness is not a vast knowing space. The suggestion that consciousness is vast is just a thorn that is used to remove another thorn, which is consciousness is small. Consciousness is locked up in my body. In reference to that belief, the teaching says, no, consciousness is vast. It relieves us of the thorn, the belief consciousness is small. But once we have taken once the idea consciousness is vast, has done its job, we then need to abandon the consciousness is vast idea. We have to throw away the thorn that removes the thorn. Consciousness is not small, it is not vast, it is without dimensions. Because dimensions only come into apparent existence. The single dimension of time comes into existence through thought, and the 3 dimensions of space come into apparent existence through perception. Mind is thought and perception. In other words, the 4 dimensions of time and space come into apparent existence through mind, through the finite mind. But before the finite mind rises out of infinite consciousness, there is no time and space. There are no dimensions. Don't try to think of that. But isn't that our experience? What do we all experience in deep sleep? The mind is not present in deep sleep. Does anyone have any experience of time or space in deep sleep? No. Time and space are not properties of external reality. They are time is consciousness refracted through the prism of thought. Space is consciousness refracted through the prism of perception. So the stuff that time and space are made out of is consciousness. But time and space is what consciousness looks like when viewed through the prism of the finite mind. So time and space are real, but their reality is infinite consciousness. Just like the three-dimensional landscape we see in the movie is a modulation of the 2-dimensional screen. The reality of the 3-dimensional landscape is the 2-dimensional screen. So that the finite mind superimposes its own limitations on reality, forgets that it has done so, and presumes that those limitations are qualities of reality. No, they are simply its own limitations. They are what reality looks like when viewed through the glasses of the finite mind. And this is so in line with our experience. Has anyone here ever experienced time? In order to experience time, we would have to experience either the past or the future. Try now to step out of the now, the present, just for a moment, and go to the past. Try to experience a past. Try to go to that vast space that supposedly exists behind the now, or before the now. Can you go there? Can anyone go to this space called the past? Has anyone ever been there?
That's impossible.
Or the future? Has anyone ever left the now, the present, and visited this space called the future? You see, nobody has ever had any experience of a past or a future. You see, we don't actually experience time. This now, do you have a sense that this now is moving along a line of time?
No.
I mean, how long does this now last? These questions don't make sense. Or how fast is the now moving through time? None of these questions make sense because this now is not going anywhere. It hasn't come from an infinite past. It's not slowly going towards an everlasting future. This now it's not going anywhere. It's standing still. Thoughts and perceptions are flowing through it. It is not flowing through thoughts and perceptions or with thoughts and perceptions.
Yeah, but even language is not, because even standing still would already suggest a space.
This is all language. No, but it's not possible to say a single word that is true about reality. Not a single word that I have spoken is true. Because all language is designed to describe objective experience. But in the final analysis, when we look for the objects, the things separate from the subject, we never find them. Nobody has ever found a discrete object in existence. All we find is the knowing of experience, and that knowing never goes away. Hence it says in the Bhagavad Gita, that which is never ceases to be. That which is not never comes into existence. There are no things. And there's no language for this, because our language is a language of things. I'm trying to use this clumsy language that is designed for speaking of things. I'm trying to use it to speak of that which is, but which is not itself a thing. And I'm just doing my best with metaphors and analogies, but they all fall short to a greater or less degree. Hence poetry and art and music. There are other ways of expressing reality.
Well, you're doing an extremely good job.
Thank you.
No, I mean, it's just the width and the depth of your explanations have been very helpful, and they are very helpful, and they are very unlike anything I've listened to a few people, but.
You know, I was on a classical Advaita path for 25 years, mantra meditation, Shankaracharya. Ramana Maharshi was beside my bed for 25 years. I read it over and over again, and like someone said yesterday, was it Daniel? I can't remember. I knew what he was saying was true. From the moment I opened it, I knew it was true. And as Daniel said yesterday, I could never read another book. I tried to read other things, I would come back for years, and I knew it was true, but I didn't understand it, but I didn't mind because I knew I was taking in the truth. And it took, so this was for 20 or 25 years, and it wasn't until I met Francis who really showed me how to connect with these ideas in my experience. And those first few years with Francis, it was like a kind of firework display inside me. Over and over again, I would have these realizations, that's what he meant. Why didn't he say it like that? And of course I would then go back to the book and realize he did say it exactly like that. But that I couldn't connect to it. I had this intuition, this is true. I knew it was true, but I couldn't make it my own. And no amount of mantra meditation, no amount of reading would make it my own. It was only when I met Francis and we had these conversations and I went through all the experiential meditations that I started understanding. And when I say understanding, I mean experiential understanding. It became my experience. And then I went back to Ramana Maharshi and Nisargadatta and later Atmananda Krishna Menon, and I thought, and the Shankaracharya, it's all there. They said it all, but they hadn't elaborated the pathways. They did to a certain extent, but I needed. This is no criticism of their beautiful teachings, but I had not been able to join the dots. It was only when I met Francis and he gave me these experiments with my experience that it began to be clear, and that I then began to start formulating and making up my own pathways.